Hello students, welcome back for this lecture number 3 on unit number 4. So in the last class we have started with the topic that is constructor, and we have discussed the different types of constructor which are there in object oriented programming language, and also we have demonstrated the program using a default constructor. So in this class we are going to move ahead, that we are going to discuss the next type of a constructor, that is parameterized constructor, and also we are going to discuss that how we can pass the object as an parameter, the way we have passed the parameters to the function. So likewise, how exactly we are going to pass the object as an parameter, that is what we are going to see. So as discussed in the previous classes, that we are having the two different types of a constructor, namely default constructor and second is a parameterized constructor, right? So whenever we are not passing any arguments or we are not passing any parameters to the constructor, then that becomes the default constructor, which is usually used to initialize the values, right? Whereas the second type of a constructor which we are having in object oriented programming language, that is called as parameterized constructor. So the name itself indicates that we are passing some parameters with the constructor name. So in that case, that particular constructor is nothing but called as parameterized constructor. That is, a constructor is called parameterized constructor when it accepts a specific number of parameters. It may be 1, 2, 3. It is total depending upon the uh, it is total depending on the programmer, that how many parameters the programmer wants to pass within a constructor name, and to initialize the data members of a class with the distinct values, right? So that is what the parameterized constructor we are having. So if I'm talking about the example that what the parameterized constructor is, or how we are going to write the parameterized constructor while writing the program, so the rules will be the same, that the constructor name should be the same as class name. It should not have any return type. We can provide some access specify in order to give the accessibility control over that particular constructor. But the moment we are saying the parameterized constructor, so along with the constructor name we are going to pass certain parameters to it, so that will be a parameterized constructor, right? So let's say I have created one class minor, right? In that I'm just creating one two data members, that is a name and course, both are this of type string, and here I'm creating a constructor that is same as the class, and that is minor, and in that I'm passing two parameters or the two arguments, right? That is what a string s and string name, whereas I'm initializing these values of string s and string n to the data members which I have no created earlier, right? Then I have written one function, and now see, whenever we are not creating any constructor explicitly, so the compiler or Java code implicitly calls the constructor in order to initialize the values. But when you are creating a parameterized constructor in the code, in that case, whenever you are calling the constructor while creating the object, so you need to pass this parameterized constructor. Right, if you can see that here I have created an object that is ob1, and when I tries to call the constructor, so now as my program is having a parameterized constructor, here I pass the values with respect to the number of parameters which I passed while creating the parameterized constructor, right? So as I pass the two parameters here, so here I'm passing the two values with respect to these two parameters. That is what Java is, what a string name and course is j2ae. Likewise, I have created one more object that is ob2, and I have just called this ob show function, right? So let's just jump to the Eclipse and we'll just try to modify the earlier program, right? Earlier program which you have written, that means of that by means of the default constructor, and let's say now I want to make this program uh, using parameterized constructor, right? So let's convert the default constructor to the parameterized constructor. So in order to declare the parameterized constructor, what we need to do, that we need to pass the parameter with the constructor name. So what I'm doing is I'm just creating the parameterized constructor. So again the rules are same, that the class name and the parameter, the constructor name should be same. Your constructor name should precede or can precede with the access specifier, which can be public, private or protected. and as it is a parameterized constructor, so I need to pass some parameters. So let's say I'm passing int b, let's say I'm passing int d, then passing int uh, t, right, and let's say I'm passing int h, right. So these are the parameters which I passed, and what I will do is I will simply assign these parameters equals to the data members which are declared. So let's say b is what my basic, let's say I'm just converting this, make it sequential. It doesn't make any difference, but in order to understand properly, I'm just changing this TAT. Then let's say DA we are having as D, and let's say HRA we are having as H, right? So likewise, we have initialized these data members to the parameters which are passed inside this constructor. So now we are having basic equals to B, T equals to T, D equals to D, and HR equals to H, right? Now you can see that there is an error in the main program or main function. Why is it so? Because earlier we were having the default constructor, so we passed the default constructor, but now as your constructor is having a parameter, so whenever you are calling the constructor, we need to pass those values, right? Like first value is for basic, that is B. The second I need to pass the value for TA, that is, let's say 3400. Then I need to pass the value for DA, let's say I'm saying 24,000. Likewise I have to pass the value for HRA, let's say 2400, right? Now you can see that there is a no error in this particular code, right? Now if I try to execute the code, now you can see that it is working as similar as the earlier program, but only the thing is that I have make the changes in the constructor. That is, rather than having a default constructor, now I am having a parameterized constructor, and as I have declared the parameterized constructor, so whenever I am calling the constructor, I need to pass the number of parameters which I am passing inside the constructor while declaring it, right? So it is taking some time for the execution, so let's execute it one more time and let's see what is the output we are getting. So now we can see that the total salary of the employee is what the calculation of all the values which are passing inside the constructor name, right? So likewise, now what we can do is we can just create one more object in order to understand it. Let's say I'm just creating one more object that is having the name as s2, and again you can now pass the several values, the different values to this. So let's say this is 30,000, this is 44,000, likewise. And again I can call the calculate function by means of the second object which I created, that is s2 dot calculate. Just a second, it is not responding. So what we will pass, that is simply s2 dot calculate, that is the function name. So calculate, so if I pass this function and if I put the semicolon and if I try to execute the code, now you can see that you'll be getting the two different outputs. That is, first is based on to this parameters which are passed inside the constructor, and second is based on this parameters which are passed inside the second object or second constructor, right? So this is what the parameterized constructor, in which we are passing the parameters or the number of arguments, and we have to make sure that whatever the parameters, whatever the arguments we are passing inside the constructor, the same number of arguments we need to pass when we are calling the constructor inside the main function or whenever we are creating the object, right? So this is clear. And the next time very important is, if you just observe that your constructor is looking as similar as the method, because the method is also doing the same thing and constructor is also looking the same thing, that which is having some name, which is having some body, and we are calling those constructor or the method inside the main function in order to execute the body of the constructor or the method, right? But there are some differences, as we have discussed that whenever we are talking about the constructor name should be always the same as the class name, whereas this is not required in case of method, that you can declare the method name as per your choice or as per the programmer's choice. Then method has a return type, that we are writing void, integer, float, or whatever you want, whereas constructor never have does not have a return type, right? We cannot declare the constructor as a void, int, character, float, right? Then you can call a method any number of times, whereas constructor is called when an object is created, right? Whenever we want to create a new object, in that case we require the constructor to be get called. So the constructor calling is totally depending upon that how many objects you want to create for a particular class, right? And the next and very important topic, that is what passing object as an argument, right? So the name itself indicates, rather than passing the argument, simple arguments or simple parameters, now what we want to objects, we want that we should able to pass the object as an argument. Means let's say I'm saying that I'm having a class and I have created an object for that, and what I want to pass that object as an argument inside the another function, right? So that is what passing object as an argument. So we can also pass arguments while creating the other instance of a class. So if you can see that, again I have just keep the same example, that is the minor class. Again I have declared one data member, that is a student name. I have created one of constructor, that is a parameterized constructor, where I initialize the student name equals to name, and then I am creating an object for this minor, that is minor equals to minor class name, and my object is the object, right? Whereas I'm just saying, see, this student equals to my object dot student name, right? And then I'm just creating one function, that is void display, and here I'm calling the main function, and inside the main function I have created an object, that is obj1. And now inside this, as there is a parameterized constructor, so I'll be passing the number of parameters which I passed while declaring the parameterized constructor. So there is a single parameter, so the same parameter I'm passing over here, and then again I'm creating one more object, that is minor object 2, and now inside this I am passing the object, right? I'm not passing the parameter, I'm passing the object. That is what passing object as an argument, right? And again I will be printing obj1 dot display, obj2 dot display, right? So this is what no, this is how we can pass the object as an argument. That is what, rather than passing the arguments or the parameters directly, we can even pass the object, right, as an argument. So this is what regarding passing object as an argument. There is one more example which is based on to your constructor. If you can see that this is nothing but which type of constructor? Yes, of course, it is a default constructor which is having the name as the same as the class name. It is having some definition, and then you are calling this constructor while creating the object, and accordingly, you are just calling the display function with the object name, right? If I ask you that what will be the output, so it is, but obviously it is a addition of this length plus breadth plus height, which is having the values equals to 20, 13, and 10, right? So this is what the thing which you will be going to get. Right, so this is what regarding the constructors and passing the object as an argument, right? So that's it regarding the constructor. In the next class we'll be going to discuss about the very important topic in object oriented programming language, that is the method overloading, and the final topic from this unit is called as the constructor overloading, right? So that's it for this particular class. See you in the next class. Thank you.